What is going on, everybody? As always, for starters, the land acknowledgement. I'm recording this here on occupied Tiwa territory, otherwise known as Albuquerque, New Mexico, and together, let us continue this fight and struggle for black and indigenous liberation. So, to not get things confused anymore, I feel like things can be a little bit confusing. I run my campaign, and I have my branding outside of my campaign. So I'm going to start announcing which is which and call it this is the Crime Matters More Than Who segment of It's Controversial. And as always, y'all already know your host, Zachariah Jazz. So finally, after a very, very long wait, we have the independent monitors report. That's the IMR-14. And in it, well, I guess we all could have guessed, right? It's more use of force cases, a lot of backlog cases, 667 backlog cases. Very few go investigated, and even less go disciplined. So let's see here. Let me read off these. I'm gonna show you some screenshots directly from the IMR report. And as APD, when it comes to the CASA, they have been consistent with primary and secondary compliance and has improved operational compliance by 3 percentage points from IMR-13. Now, let's contrast some numbers from this one to IMR-13 to IMR-12. So primary compliance is 100% across the board. Secondary compliance for 14 was at 82%, 13 is at 82%, and 12 was at 91%. Operational compliance was at 62% for IMR 14, 59% for 13, and 64% for IMR 12. So primary compliance relates mostly to development and implementation of acceptable policies conforming to national best practices. APD remains in 82% secondary compliance as of this reporting period, which means that effective follow-up mechanisms have been taken to ensure that APD personnel understand the requirements of promulgated policies, e.g., training, supervising, coaching, and implementing disciplinary processes to ensure APD personnel understand the policies as promulgated and are implementing them in the field. Hold on, let me drink water real quick. Operational compliance with the requirements of the CASA for the 14th reporting period are marginally higher than they were for the 8th reporting period, from 59% in IMR 8 compared to 62% in IMR 14. This means that 62% of the time, field personnel either perform tasks as required by the CASA, or that when they fail, management personnel note and correct in-field behavior that is not compliant with the requirements of the CASA. This sheds light on just how problematic APD's compliance practices have become. These marginal levels of compliance come despite continuous, intensive, and extensive hands-on guidance and advice from the monitoring team. Obviously, operational compliance is the most important of the 3 compliance levels, right? Because APD consistently, they whine and gripe about a shortage of hands, right? The lack of numbers, lack of people to do the work. But this here shows that they've had hands-on guidance this entire time throughout this 6-year period. So on to the next screenshot. Clearly, the most important issues affecting APD during IMR 14 reporting period involve misconduct investigations, use of force investigations, the lack of progressive discipline when misconduct is found, and supervision and leadership. All 15 non-force related misconduct investigations completed by APD, 6 by IAPS, and 9 by the area commands were found to be deficient. A total of 17 misconduct cases, 6 investigated by IAPS, and 9 area command investigations were reviewed, including 2 that were completed by outside agencies. The only properly investigated case reviewed by the monitoring team this reporting period was completed by an outside agency. In 2 consecutive reporting period, a virtual shutdown of use of force investigations has occurred in IFD, that's Internal Affairs Force Department. Yeah, I believe so. only 3% of the 216 level 2 cases opened this reporting period were closed. Only one of those 7 was completed within 90 days, less than 0.5%, as required by the CASA. Only 2 of the 91 level 3 use of force cases opened during this period were completed by IAFD. It's 2%. Neither of those cases were completed within the CASA required 90-day period. We find these failings to be more than notable, given the amount of time the monitoring team spent with APD in the last 3 reporting periods specifically focused on process improvement processes at IAFD. And IMR-13 was supposed to be the most damning. It was either that one or the one before. Of the 12 cases reviewed for compliance concerning discipline, only 58% met the requirements for adherence to progressive discipline as outlined in the CASA. Furthermore, a second backlog of 667, as I mentioned earlier, uninvestigated use of force cases as of the draft this period were reported. The second backlog is more than double the initial backlog APD dealt with from 2018 to 2020, and does not include any of the contemporary cases left uninvestigated by IAFD. Approximately 83% of these cases are already time barred for discipline in accordance with the CBA should misconduct be found. That means there's nothing can be done about those anymore. Since its discovery, this backlog has been reduced from 667 cases to 660 cases as of October 25th, 2021. At this rate of case productivity, we project that it will take APD 94 months to clear this second backlog, which again would ensure no disciplinary actions for policy violations in another 667 cases. That is because the time bar, in accordance to the CBA. I'm not sure what the CBA is, but whatever, we'll figure that out later. Given the amount of focus on the problems related to IAFD investigations in previous monitors' reports and the exceptional amounts of technical assistance provided by the monitoring team relating to IAFD processes, we can only conclude that this new backlog was intentional, and yet another counter designed to ensure that officers are not disciplined for known policy violations. We consider this another example of deliberate noncompliance exhibited by APD, and I'm going to get to why it is deliberate in a minute. Leadership and supervision, especially in the critical areas of reform listed above, are simply lacking or in some cases non-existent. As such, these findings require direct action by the city and APD leadership to identify the causes of and to take corrective actions responding to what can only be described as deliberate failures to comply with the existing APD policy and with CASA requirements. Given the extensive amounts of technical assistance provided by the monitoring team related to misconduct investigations and to workload management, we can only conclude that these jarring failures are deliberate. And they're going to say this, they say this a few times. And I feel like it's to get the point across that they are trying to help them throughout this entire period, but they just aren't doing it. This reform project's evaluation process, i.e. the manner in which the monitoring team assesses and reports progress on the required reforms, has been closely aligned to the measurable tenets of effective management. First, the methodology closely conforms with the concept that effective management is based on developing cogent and coherent policies, articulation, and of acceptable activities required of police personnel. Officers, supervisors, managers, and leaders must be clearly on notice of organizational expectations so that they understand and are willing to adhere to those expectations. Once these reformative policies have been articulated, all involved personnel, recruits, officers, supervisors, and managers must be trained to the point that they understand and are capable of implementing these policies. Finally, and most importantly, once adequate policies are developed and effective training is delivered, police personnel, recruits, officers, supervisors, managers, and leaders must be willing and able to ensure that the policies and training are followed in the field. It's saying that these police officers have to be willing and they have to know how and to implement these policies in the field, in the line of duty, when they're on the ground, instead of beating the shit out of somebody, that they're doing their job. Once that initial commitment is achieved and personnel are adequately trained to the point that they are capable of implementing their training on a day-to-day basis and can implement expected operational processes, progress is possible. This means that departmental operations should change, such that the vast majority of police interactions will occur within parameters established by policy, training, and supervision. In addition, it is assumed that those few officers, supervisors, and managers who prove they cannot or will not comply to organizational norming processes will be identified by internal oversight processes and will be either retrained, counseled, or disciplined to the point that compliance either occurs or they decide to leave the agency, or in rare instances are separated from the agency. I'm not sure what that means. The monitor's oversight process for APD during the past 6 years has been based on this near universal understanding of police operational management and control. After 6 years of implementation, APD has fallen significantly short in its ability to engender in supervisory, managerial, and leadership efforts that have been demonstrated much earlier in other law enforcement agencies monitored in this manner. That means that other agencies, other organizations have been able to do it. The fact that this planned change process works and can work well is documented in the fact that a large majority of this monitor staff working on the Albuquerque Police Department monitoring process are past members of organizations that have been directly monitored by the current APD monitor. These team members have lived the change process and done so successfully in their respective agencies, thus are uniquely situated to guide APD successfully through the change process. Given the amount of technical assistance provided to APD by members of this monitoring team, given the fact that for every out-of-compliance outcome found by the monitor, there are recommendations developed to guide APD into compliance, given the inordinate amounts of technical assistance provided to APD by members of the monitoring team over the past 6 years, the monitor can only conclude, based on his knowledge, training, and experience, that these failures at APD are deliberate. Now, here is a chart over the 1 through 14 IMR reports. Now, the red is the operational compliance, right? It's the implementation of the new policies that are being used in the field. Now, it shows a consistent a rate. After after IMR-14, it's because that was a transition of administrations. I think I took a screenshot of that I'll get to. I might not have, but either way. So they released mini reports. They didn't release an entire IMR-7 like they did for the other 13. So they didn't have anything to do right there. Instead, they tried to develop different ways to help implement the policies to meet operational compliance with the CASA. So just if you didn't know what primary compliance, secondary, and operational compliance are, here's what they are. Primary compliance is the policy part of compliance. To attain primary compliance, APD must have in place operational policies and procedures designed to guide officers, supervisors, and managers in the performance of the tasks outlined in the CASA. As a matter of course, the policies must be reflective of the requirements of the CASA, must comply with national standards for effective policing policy, and must demonstrate trainable and evaluable policy components. Secondary compliance is attained by implementing acceptable training-related implementation of supervisory, managerial, and executive practices designed to and effective in implementing the policy as written, e.g. sergeants routinely enforce the policies among field personnel and are held accountable by managerial and executive levels of the department for doing so. By definition, there should be operational artifacts such as reports, disciplinary records, remands to retraining, follow-up, and even revisions to policies if necessary, indicating that the policies developed in the first stage of compliance are known to, followed by, and important to supervisory and managerial levels of the department. Now, operational compliance is attained at the point that the adherence to policies is apparent in the day-to-day operation of the agency, e.g. line personnel are routinely held accountable for compliance, not by the monitoring staff, but by their sergeants, and sergeants are routinely held accountable for compliance by their lieutenants and command staff. In other words, the ABD owns and enforces its policies. So, I feel that the reason that these that they're not meeting operational compliance is because a lot of these sergeants and a lot of these lieutenants are members of the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, the APOA, and we all know that the APOA wants to do away with the corner pointed settlement agreement, the CASA. They don't want it. They don't want it. Matter of fact, this comes back to the survey that the APOA released, that 421 officers took part in, allegedly, or supposedly, right? Now, if you recall me saying that a lot of these answers look like they were just copied over and typed a little bit different. Like maybe there was one person assigned to one answer, just making it look different and filling in, giving like a few spaces in between each one. I know. I remember those bubble sheets in the what was it? The state standardized test. Come on, like I can't be the only one that just filled in the bubbles, and you try not to follow a pattern. You try to randomize it, make it look legitimate. Come on, I mean, we all did it at one point or another, and I feel like that's what happened here. But if not, these officers really do believe that the Department of Justice and the consent decree are part of the problem and are really what's driving up the crime, because cops they claim to be handcuffed from doing their jobs because they're afraid of getting in trouble for little things. We all know, as I've mentioned before, that they're not afraid of using force and getting in trouble for it. No, that's not what they're afraid of. They're afraid of the little things, taking off their seatbelts or cussing on camera. They're afraid of that little shit. They're not afraid of beating somebody's ass and getting in trouble for it, because they obviously don't. They have a culture of it. I mean, it's in every single IMR report. That's that lack of operational compliance. That's why they can't beat the 64% compliance rate. Now, here's some screenshots of from the survey that the APOA put out. Here's the first one. It's the third question. Question 3. What is the one major contributing factor for you in considering a new career path? There it is. The yellow bar. Department of Justice. And there's the increased scrutiny on you as a police officer, lack of local support for law enforcement, need for higher income, NA, I'm not looking for another job. Look, I mean, increased scrutiny on you as a police officer. Yeah, because we're sick of you using force on people. Maybe if you were to comply with the court-appointed settlement agreement, there wouldn't be so much scrutiny, right? If cops weren't killing people unjustifiably, there wouldn't be so much scrutiny. If you guys were doing your jobs from the beginning, there wouldn't be so much scrutiny, right? If you were a force of good, like you should be, there wouldn't be so much scrutiny. Any reasonable person with any moral compass, any humanity, can see, especially when it's recorded for all to see, knows that you guys fuck people up and get away with it. And you shouldn't. And you do more often than not. But Albuquerque Police Department isn't worried about that, because I mean, look, they're more worried about the Department of Justice. 184 responses. 184 out of a total of 421. That's damning. Question number 11. I chose these questions just because they have a graph. What do you believe is the main contributing factor to Albuquerque's growing crime problem? Not drugs, not guns, not really lack of officers. The justice system and the Department of Justice. Look at that. 179 answers. for the Department of Justice and 107 for justice system problems. Not drugs, drug culture, whatever that means, and gangs, etc. Only 17 responses out of 421 officers that took part. Look, right there beneath the question, it says answered 421, skipped none. That means every single cop that took part in this survey answered this question. Question 17. How much time do you currently spend in a day on administrative duties to include being investigated? More than half my shift. 5 to 6 hours, 3 to 4, 1 to 2. I mean, they're always being investigated a lot. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It means they're not doing their job right a lot, and they are not getting in trouble for it. Because, I mean, that's obviously a lie, right? Because, I mean, IAFD didn't complete that many cases. Close to none, right? What are they being investigated for? I can't help but wonder, but close to nothing. I mean, if they're able to backlog 667 use of force cases in just this reporting period, right? It doesn't seem like they're being investigated for very much to me. Question 20. What do you think is a priority for the Albuquerque Police Department? Only 14 responded crime fighting. DOJ compliance, 337 responses to. Other, or the written responses, I didn't get into all that because there's way too much. That's bullshit. That's what that is. Now here's the one, the last question. Question 21, do you feel supported by the APOA? This is just to give them a confidence boost, right? Just to say, we have our cops' backs. We support you. We're going to look out for you. We get you out of trouble. We show up to your use of force investigations cases when you actually have to show up for a court, when you use force or kill somebody or beat the shit out of somebody. We get you out of trouble for that, and then we get you paid for bilingual pay. We get you court pay, court fees, court allowance, whatever the hell it's called. We get you extra overtime. We get you everything you want. Come on, be a part of the union, be a part of the APOA where we look after ours, right? I mean, Sean Willoughby was a cop, and this is their confidence boost. This is to get more officers to join the union. I mean, they have several sergeants and lieutenants already a part, of the union. This is why a lot of this just gets swept under the rug, and I'm not convinced that the chief doesn't have something to do with that, because in recent reporting, in a report, in a response that he gave to the APOA when they first started this Crime Matters More campaign, he said that he was going to work to get the disciplinary actions reduced, right? That's what he said. I mean, this is all happening under his watch. There's no way that between IMR-12 and IMR-13, where he was interim chief, and now IMR-14, there's no way that he does not know that these things are happening. There's just no way. Especially because too many of us that continue to push him on this, that continue to call him out on his bullshit, to continue to call out Keller on his bullshit. There are too many of us reminding them that they are not doing their jobs right. That they are the problem. Not the Department of Justice. Not the people that they beat up. But them and their culture of violence. that they just can't seem to get over. They are the problem. They are the danger to the community. Look, only 17% said that the cause of crime was actually drugs and drug culture and gangs. Only 17%. So we are not the problem. Department of Justice isn't the problem. They're the ones actually trying to make them a better department. No, they want to be violent. It's that the fact that they can't go beat up people and I guess spread their justice message and beat it into people to get them, like, when your parents spanking to you as a kid, and sometimes it only took that one time. I know when my dad was spanked me when I was a baby, he only took one time for me to act right. I mean, I didn't get a tattoo or start cussing in front of him until I was 18. I don't have a criminal record. Dude, took that one spanking, right? Is that their logic? Just to beat some act right into people? Is that what it is? I would say what happens when the shoe's on the other foot or anything like that, where I don't want to incite something. I would never do that. No, we always hope that everybody makes it out okay. Even you, Officer Verbeck. So what's the problem here? And how are we going to solve it? In January, the state leaders, city leaders, or whatever, they're going to put forth a new crime initiative. But what about officer crime? What about their crimes against the people? What are they going to do about that? And what are we going to do to make sure that they do something about it? Are we going to wait till IMR-14? 16? Are we just going to hope that this new emergency department, this new safety department is going to do something, that they're going to make a difference? I don't think so. I don't even think it's going to last very long. No faith. It was all just a PR stunt to get the vote. But I have kept you here for 30 minutes too long. Well, 28 to be exact, almost exact. As always, if you would like to support my work, here's my PayPal and Cash App. And until next time, I love you guys. Zachariah Jazz signing out, and uhuru.